Hello all, and welcome to our discussion today about the employee's whole self. Please introduce yourself, starting with the person closest to me. And to warm things up, could you tell us something that you personally find supportive of your own well-being in your organization?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Gutierrez. I'm the Vice President of Talent Acquisition at Axios. If you haven't heard of us, we're a media-based company. We're located in DC. And we produce news in smart brevity format. It's very, very exciting and lovely. One of aspects of our culture that I would say that I personally find really inspiring and what I feel resonates really strongly with even my team and other folks on the HR team is we truly have this culture of like a risk-free culture. And I think it's because we are a startup and we're a media company and we're really looking to one up on our competitor in this market where there's so many media companies are in, and how you're able to find this wild success right away. You have to innovate, you have to take risk, and we really celebrate the failure aspect of it. There's a multitude of programming that we have in place where we acknowledge like how we do this, and we have a retroactive session on X, Y, and Z. But we truly do have this really great risk-free culture, and we celebrate those failures. And that is one aspect of coming to Axios where we talk about it, but we actually show it. It's in our actions, it's in our processes, it's in our performance reviews, and it's really baked in throughout. So that's one aspect that I find self-empowering and allows me to get some rest done.
Great. Hi, I'm Joanna Daly, and I lead Total Rewards for IBM. One thing about the culture in my organization that I find supports my well-being is we hold each other accountable to take our time off, and that time off is respected. So there's no like, hey, can I just call you while you're on vacation? It's actually, if you do it, you get, my boss who's the CHRO will say, hey, you're on vacation. I don't want to see any text from you. I don't want to see any emails from you. And so that's something that I really appreciate.
Hi, everybody. My name is Carmen Whitney and I'm the Chief People Officer at Yelp, where our mission is to connect people with great local businesses. And I feel really fortunate to work for an organization where we are really focused on creating employee-first experiences. So we've recently redone our employee value proposition really around this central idea that it is a whole person who shows up for work every day, and we need to support our employees in all facets of their life so they can we can all bring our best professional selves to work. One of the things that has been really meaningful to me, particularly over the last year, is our focus on mental health and well-being. And we offer a benefit where our employees can meet one-on-one with licensed coaches and therapists. And that just really, we all need some support in navigating through some of life's tougher seasons. And for me personally, this past year I've been navigating a divorce and moved to a new city on my own. So some pretty big life changes, and I still need to be able to show up for a leader as a leader for my team. So having those resources available to me and being really supported in that way by my company has just been really game-changing for me. And I know it means a lot to our employees as well.
Great. Arthur Lane, I'm the head of marketing for a company called Stork Club. We offer family benefits. Core product is fertility, but it goes all the way through to menopause with hormone replacement therapy. At our company, we're a small startup, 50 plus employees. We have very open communication, which is very helpful and very empowering. So from the CEO down to the lowest employee in the company, there's a direct line of communication, which we can do because we're so small, but it's refreshing to be able to have a clear line of communication from the founder and entrepreneur all the way through. So that's very empowering. We offer a wide array of benefits. So, open PTO is very helpful, but we all are a big team. So we believe in a big team with very lofty goals, and we hold each other accountable. That reveling in what works and what doesn't work, that's usually a good question we ask almost every meeting. What worked last week? What didn't work? And if what didn't work, should we keep doing it, or should we try something else? So that's refreshing in a startup world.
Thank you all so much. All right, so for the most part, except for Arthur, where he said he works for a small startup, but for the most part, your companies have large workforces, which can create less familiarity among the work groups, especially with so many of us being remote workers at this point. How can your companies factor for individual employee needs? And Joanna, I'd like for you to start us off on that question.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, the first thing we start with is there enough choice in our benefit offerings? There needs to be enough flexibility. One kind of healthcare plan isn't going to fit everyone's needs. So when you look at health offerings, mental health offerings, financial wellness offerings, it's having enough flexibility to start with. The second is looking at the data. So sometimes in the data around our benefits utilization, or around kinds of inquiries that our vendors and our partners are getting, it tells us, hey, people are asking more about fertility or menopause, or this is something on people's minds. So that's something that we need to support. And listen directly to your employees. For better or worse, we get to hear everything our employees think. We have very open Slack channels in IBM, so IBMers tell me what they like, what they don't like, what they need, and that to me is the most valuable information in terms of how we meet people where they are.
Okay, thank you so much, Joanna. And Israel, would you like to answer that question as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And on the opposite side of total rewards, there's those qualitative aspects of benefits for your employees. And one component that we've implemented this past year at Axios really centered around allyship, but also psychological safety for your employees. Axios being a highly distributed workforce, we're around 500 across the country. But we created what's called an EEG this year, an employee education group centered on allyship. So this is part of our larger DIA initiatives. And essentially what this allyship group is all around is education. And it starts from the top. So it's literally some of our execs who are in this group and anyone else in the organization who wants to join. And we talk about education. And we partner with our other 6 ERGs internally to find ways to move programming, how to elevate recruiting processes, how to re-innovate our performance management evaluations. And in the quarter and a half that it's been around, we have made some really great strides. Some of the yearly components that we have in our allyship programming, which is also derives to our DEI programming as well. Q1, we had a speaker come to our company retreat. We did a 90-minute session on unconscious bias. So we can all speak on the same language, we all understand the same topic, and we can move forward. Q2 was manager training with a bias component. Q3 coming up is recruiting on unconscious bias, which I got locked down. And then Q4 is just like a wrap up of the entire year. And so with all that said, this is one area where the employee will then have all of these different components, knows how to talk to their manager, can be able to have difficult conversations, and we're all on the same page. So that's one area that I'm particularly really proud about.
Okay, thank you for sharing y'all's experiences and how your companies are, trying to really progress things. All right, so in recent years, the connection between wellness and productivity has been widely recognized. I think the pandemic also had a big hand in all of that. But what is the business case for employers going above and beyond with wellness and mental health benefits? And I want to pass that on to you, Carmen.
Well, I think when you recognize that it is an employee who shows up to work as a full person, right? We're not just the employee persona that we bring into the workplace. We all have different things going on in our lives at any one given time. You don't know what an individual might be navigating throughout the course of the day, the week. So really ensuring that we have the opportunity to make sure that we're designing programs that care for the employee as a whole person, and that really we are able to address mental health and well-being and create flexible benefits and needs that really care for the individual as a person so that we can show up as the best and our full professional selves at work. It's really important for managers to be able to, particularly in these environments, and I think empathy has always been really critically important, but as we moved through the pandemic and we moved into people's homes, it really just outlined the really critical importance to be able to understand and walk in somebody's shoes and recognize where like the boundaries of life and work might intersect on any given day. And so really equipping managers with the skills to lead with empathy has also been important in a way that we may not, should have been obvious, but maybe wasn't as obvious. And so, one of the things that we've been doing at Yelp is to really develop some curriculum for managers to really help them build those capabilities and skill sets to lead with empathy so that our employees can show up at work as their best professional selves.
Thank you. And Arthur, would you like to weigh in on that?
Sure. I have a background in wellness, so I think it's around 15 to 20% of the annual salaries all added up in your companies that are for involuntary separation from the company. And that's a direct correlation to the person not having a good well-being and connectedness or engagement at the employer. Wellness programs help improve that and by making them personalized, connected, and supported. So I know there's other questions around personalization, and I won't dive deep into there, but an overall diverse package, which we've talked about, like it's not a one-size-fit-all. It's meaningful to me as a person, not as a group, so it's personalized, and it's supported by my company, and not only by my company, but my coworkers are all in it together, that team approach. So wellness really is that tool at the very tip of the spear that you use, and then all the programs that HR creates around that helps amplify that. So it's very an important part of a benefits package, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. And I mean, I want to share with you all a little bit of a story here to kind of set everyone for what we're getting into. But there are a lot of people who come from different backgrounds. I mean, we have people of color, we have immigrants, people with healthcare issues. For example, I'm someone who suffers with endometriosis, which, that can be very difficult to openly discuss in front of people. Even as I say this now, I'm like, oh, should I say this in front of a room of people? But, I've had to step up and talk to my employers about it before. I work with, in our editorial team, it's predominantly male dominated. And I've had to say, I need to talk to them about this. I need to advocate for myself and say, hey, listen, you might not understand what this pain is, but I need to advocate for myself. But not everyone might have the courage to say, hey, I want to talk to you openly about this healthcare issue. But how can you all kind of reach out to these employees without them having to bend over backwards and be like, oh no, like I have these uncomfortable discussions that I have to have with you that you might not fully understand. I mean, so how do you reach out to the employees and make sure that everyone from these diverse backgrounds have a safe space to talk to you and, just make sure that they're heard without having to feel like they're alone? And Joanna, if you want to answer that.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing some of your experiences with us, and I really appreciate that, and I'm sure everyone in the room does as well. I think the way I think about this is you can't make an assumption about where people are coming from, or that they're going to experience the programs you're offering in the same way. And one of the things I find super helpful in this is engagement with our employee resource groups. So as we're developing or people are just experiencing our benefit offerings, for example, our LGBTQ employee resource group, said, hey, we have some different things we need to think about sometimes in terms of financial planning and legal planning, depending on, the type of relationship that they're in. And, we want to we want to have a specialized session, and we also want to hear from providers who understand what these issues are as part of this community. And so that's something that, I think we can be very responsive to, and also ask our partners and our vendors who work with us, that they need to have people that are delivering these programs to our employees who are part of these communities. Another example is that, I could think I have a great mental health offering, but if there aren't providers of color and our employees of color want to see providers who understand their experiences in their community, then I don't actually have a great mental health offering when you really think about it. And that's where the partnership, with your partners and your vendors and directly with different groups of employees is really important. So you can have the same offering, but it's how do you engage different parts of your community so that they're getting what they need out of that offering, and that so your vendors and partners are showing up with people who directly understand what it's like and what they're experiencing.
And Arthur, would you like to weigh in on this?
Yeah, from my perspective, the service that we offer kind of fits exactly what was just said. So our care navigators and our network of providers are diverse, so that we meet the people where they're at. So that's really a personalized service, because if I'm a person of color, I'm going to want to see a person of color, and it's proven that you will get a better health outcome by seeing people who are like you. So that's one level of it. I think the next level, when you're internal in the company, the empathy part is huge. You have to walk a mile in the person's shoes that's working for you to have that empathy. So that empathetic trait needs to be amplified within the workforce to get the results that you want. So it's twofold. The services that you have outside have to match your diversity and equity aims, as well as internally within the company, you as a manager have to take that on too.
I will say too, from my experience at my job, my managers have been so understanding, and I'm very grateful for that. That's one of the things that makes me so excited to go into work, honestly. So thanks for sharing y'all's thoughts. All right, so moving on from that grim subject. One of the things that stresses employees out is money, and so many companies have added financial health benefits. How does that work in your organizations, and what has been the impact? And Israel, if you could start us off on this.
Absolutely. We have a few benefit offerings at Axios. Some that we implemented before the pandemic, some that we created after the pandemic, some that we still sustain today. We have work from home benefits, so we offer a $100 work from home stipend monthly to all of our full-time employees. That benefit started during the pandemic. It started the pandemic. We've still kept it around. Employees are super engaged by that, and it's just a mere $100. But one particular benefit that I have actually used in the past and resonates really strongly with our workforce is what we call the Axios Family Fund. And in the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, the founders created what we call the Axios Family Fund. And it was $100,000 that we put into this Axios bank account, so to speak. And any employee who was going through any type of hardship, COVID-related, lost a loved one, a partner was let go from their employer, whatever the case may be, they would request additional funds from the family fund. And it was, the application process only went through to Jim, our CEO, and our head of HR. And those were the only two people who saw it. And then we would distribute those funds and made that employee's life a little bit better during whatever particular hardship they were going through. When I joined Axios in 2022, I think that's right, 2021. Oh man, I don't know.
The pandemic made it all crazy.
Really, within about 3 weeks of me joining there, new hire, still navigating the workforce. One of my brothers had passed away, and the funeral costs were just outrageous. And I was like, I'm way too new. I'm not going to apply for the Axios Family Fund. And my boss was like, just do it. And so I did. And then they gave me even more. And it's just remarkable being a new hire at this organization, still navigating the workforce and knowing who's who, but to immediately have that nature of you're part of us, you're in our family, here you go, was just really inspiring. prior to Axios, I was director of recruiting at the New York Times, and they obviously had knew that my brother was ill too. They even helped out as well, right? And so it was just, when you're an HR family, you're always in an HR family type of thing. So it was really nice to see everyone come together on that.
All right. And Carmen, is there something you want to share as well on this topic?
I don't think I have anything to add on this one. Thank you. Yeah.
That's great. So now, many companies have begun laying off workers due to artificial intelligence, or they're going through a digital transformation. There's been a lot of statistics about too where what we're gonna look like in just a few years down the line. But is there a way to relieve stress that comes with these concerns? And how can employers offer workers the confidence and support to pursue internal mobility in the company and career growth? And Joanna, if you want to kick us off on that question.
Sure, I think it's a great question. The first thing is we have to have conversations with our teams about things that are on their minds, and that might include questions about, hey, how is AI going to affect my job or my career in the future? So it's allowing some space to have those conversations. The next thing is we have to bring context. And so when I'm talking with my team, I'm reminding them that, hey, we're always over the years finding ways to make things more efficient, to automate things. AI might be a different tool that has sort of certainly captured the moment in terms of generative AI. But if I think of the way people in my organization have worked, if you think of the way you've worked, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, there's a lot of stuff that's a lot easier, that's a lot better, that's automated because we've used the technology that's available, be that software, moving things to more digital environments, automating parts of some of our jobs that, weren't really that fun, if we're honest. And so starting off with that context is super helpful because this isn't really something brand new. The idea of using technology to make our jobs easier and make our lives easier, frankly, is something we're all actually pretty used to when we think about it. And when we compare it to what usually happens, it's usually not an all or nothing proposition. It's usually, hey, maybe I spent a day a week or a day a month on some sort of task or reconciliation or taking data from one system and reorganizing it and sending it out to someone else. Well, if those things are automated, now that's a day that you have that you can do something else that is probably more valuable to the organization and is probably more fulfilling and interesting for you. And so, thinking about it that way kind of lowers the anxiety level. And Sahar, you also asked a really important second part to this question, which is how can we enable people to continue to sort of upskill, grow their careers around internal mobility? And I think of it in a few ways. The first is your policies. Do you have clear policies about how people can move inside the organization? Because if you don't have clear, explicit policies, I can guarantee you have implicit, understanding of how this works that may not be aligned with your internal mobility strategy. So I think, you should have clear policies about, can you just apply for a job? Do you have to tell your manager? What are the rules of the road for internal mobility? Mm-hmm. The second is programs. So do you have some learning programs that help people understand to get from job A to job B? These are the kind of learning the skills that you might need to learn. And lastly is culture, creating a culture where internal mobility is celebrated and it's not something that feels risky in any way. In fact, it's the least risky hire you'll make is the hire that you already know about from within your own teams.
Okay, thank you. And I think you covered that so well, but if anyone else wants to follow.
I'll follow up briefly with just quick poll for the audience. Does anyone remember, that old Microsoft computer with the little paper clip? Right? It was clippy, right?
Of course.
Okay, so that was an AI revolution, right? When Texas Instruments rolled out that massive computer of a calculator, we thought, holy crap, we are not going to need accountants anymore. We're not going to need financial analysts anymore. The paperclip came around and we were like, oh my goodness, I'm going to get all my answers here. Your teacher went around and was like, click out of Clippy. And, but then you grew and you evolved from it. I'm very passionate about this topic. Obviously from a recruiting perspective, I think AI will impact this stream so much in the future. in some of the initial, I guess, research, I have found that with the green folks on my team and even across HR as well, they are incredibly enthused about this and they want to learn more about this. So to your question on internal mobility, but also career growth, we all want to learn about this. And as an elder millennial, I'm okay, great, I have to learn a new technology now, but let's dive in because it is the future. One thing that excites me though is the human element. And you talked a little bit about context. And an AI offering or multiple tools or resources can offer a recruiter so much data to help guide you to a decision. But with data, the one thing that you will always need is context. How are you going to tell the story? How are you going to relate this to the hiring manager to make a sound hiring decision? And a human being is going to do that. And in the last debrief between a recruiter and a hiring manager, it's two human beings who are going to talk about hiring another human being. There's no robot who's going to be involved in that decision. So that gives me a little hope for the safety of recruiters in the future. But also reminds me I could always just click Clippy off. I could always just turn off ChatGPT or Meet Bard. So I'll leave that with that.
Wow, thank you all. You've really helped, stave off some of my anxieties. I've been very anxious about this topic. That's why I wanted to make sure I get a question in there about it. Alrighty. So, I guess now that we're talking technology and us being, millennials, but what are some of the things that younger people or Gen Z workforce prioritize in terms of benefits and total rewards? And how do your companies accommodate them? And Carmen, I want to start off with you.
So at Yelp, our demographic is pretty young. I think our average age is in the very low 30s. So we have a lot of younger workers and new college grads at the workplace. And we're also a remote workplace. So we shifted during the pandemic. We kind of dipped our toe into remote first. Our employees overwhelmingly voted with their feet, and we saw for us that this was really working from a business perspective. We actually just have announced our 6th quarter of record revenue. So the business is doing well. Our employees are thriving and telling us, when we had our offices open on any given day globally, we had less than 1% utilization of those offices. So really just, not for our environment, remote was working. And what we hear overwhelmingly, and this I think applies to the way of working, but also to the benefits space in particular, is that what our employees value now is flexibility, right? So I want flexibility in terms of the way that I work. I want flexibility in terms of where I live. I want flexibility in terms of the benefits that you offer to me so that I can create what for me is my right work-life fit. I don't believe in work-life balance. I think it kind of implies more of a one-size-fits-all. But what I think about work-life fit is that's very individual and unique to me as a person and what's important to me. So we do a lot of employee listening at Yelp. Our employees have overwhelmingly shared their feedback that they love what we do around wellness. And last year, they ranked it over 75% of our employees said that wellness benefits were one of the top 2 benefits that they valued. And so what we did was increase the wellness stipend that we give. And in a lot of so we also have work from home stipends, we have professional development stipends, but this all fits within the context of flexibility. So really enabling me as an individual to choose those things in those buckets that are going to be the most meaningful to me and are going to help me the most in my career. And I just think the final thing that I would say on this point, because as a remote workforce, our geographic footprint has shifted dramatically. So we went from an organization in 2019 that was largely concentrated around 8 US-centered office locations to now having employees in every 50 states, in 6 countries, and across 10 different time zones. And certainly with everything that's happening in the US, with that, we want our employees to have equal access to the care that we offer. So last year, we in the US introduced a travel benefit for reproductive health. So if employees were living in a state that was impacted by state bans or regulations that prohibited some of the care that we offered through our plans, we implemented that travel benefit. And then just last month, we expanded the benefit to cover any of the services that are provided that might be impacted by state regulations or bans, including gender affirming care, because we want to make sure that all of the services that we offer are available to all of our employees, regardless of where they choose to live.
Thank you. And Arthur, is there something you would like to add to that?
We offer those benefits that you just described to the customers that we sell to today. So we have a travel benefit, but we believe in building the benefit package that meets the employee where they're at on their journey. So it has to be flexible. So you have hundreds and hundreds of employees, thousands of employees. There's so many different iterations of your benefits package that need to be delivered. So we have what we call a flexible solution that addresses that. So meeting the person where they're at on their family journey and offering those solutions that promote diversity and equity, inclusion, and the ability to seek care, the best care, wherever that may be, because you want the best clinical outcome and the best financial outcome. So I think that you have to have a flexible benefit. The younger generation has been impacted by the events that led up to this. So we've gone through major recessions, we've had a pandemic, and now we're out on the other side. And people's views of how they would like to engage with their employer have dramatically changed over that time. And we're seeing the artifacts of it now. I don't think we'll ever see a full office again. So I think that part of the benefit is, like you just said, stipends, to be able to have a good place to work from home and to meet you where you're at.
Anna, please weigh in as well.
I just, in IBM, I have people who've joined today. I have people who are celebrating 50 years of service, sometimes more. So I have every generation in the workforce. I find there's far more commonality as opposed to differences in what people want. They want to be paid fairly. Every generation, every age likes to be recognized, likes appreciation. Everyone wants better experiences, more consumer grade experiences. And so I just tend to find that there's more commonality as opposed to, one group wants this and somebody else wants something totally different.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'm glad you mentioned money. I think it's on every employee's mind, if anything. But, with the way that right now inflation is going, and with the way that people are fearful again when we talk about AI, but there's a lot of need to excel where we are financially. Most millennials and Gen Z are freaking out about buying a house. That's a big topic. Go on the internet if you've never been. But what are some of the best practices for those who want to advocate for a higher wage or other rewards, but they feel shy or uncomfortable? It's not easy to go up to your boss and say, hey, I want a raise. So how can people do that? And how can companies encourage them to talk about what they need? And Joanna, I want to bounce that back to you.
Yeah, I love this question, by the way, and it's one that we should all be talking about more. So for people who are wondering, how do I approach a conversation about pay? My advice is learn, prepare, rehearse. And learn means, get your facts. You want to come in with a fact-based discussion, not sort of an emotional-based discussion. And your facts, to the extent that you can, should be based in your experience in the market. If you can kind of talk about my experience with what my role is paid is X, as opposed to my friend sitting there, when you're making these direct comparisons, it may feel relevant to you, but it may feel like it's not as sort of generally fact-based as it can be. You want to prepare this discussion. You don't go in when you're feeling like really upset about your pay. You need to be in a prepared state, and prepare what you want to say so that it comes across in the way that you want to say it, and rehearse it. If you have a mentor or a friend at another company, or someone that you can rehearse this conversation with who's been a manager, you can get some advice as to how they would react to you having this conversation. But the second part of your question I love, which is how can companies help employees do this? And the first is pay transparency. And I don't think that just means means letting people look up their pay ranges. I think it means full transparency. How do we do benchmarking? Which companies do we benchmark against? How do we develop the pay range? What does the pay range mean? How do managers actually make the pay decision with all this information? So we have a full education module that our employees can access, and they can, go through exactly how we do this. And I do think that is part of our responsibility as employers, because my goal is people feel good about how they're paid, they feel they understand it, and they feel it's fair. So it's also in our interest, as companies, to make it easy for people to have this conversation.
Okay, thank you. And Israel, do you have anything you want to add to it?
You said it perfectly. Everyone should follow that formula. The one piece of data that I think is new and accurate that did not exist before 2020 and 2021 around compensation transparency laws is there's comp now in job descriptions. This is a real thing, and these are accurate because the employers are saying we will pay you this range. So I tell a lot of my friends and former colleagues, sometimes I'll tell my close friends at work, here's how to advocate for yourself. Look up your job, look up similar companies, aggregate those numbers, here's ranges, here's the data. And in that format, you're not being, you're removing your feelings from the conversation, but here's the data. It's out there and it's accurate. It's not LinkedIn, it's not Glassdoor. We don't know who puts in that data. This is accurate. So that's my actual little tidbit there.
All right, thank you. And, to keep time in mind, I just want to do a quick speed round with all of you. Maybe if you could give me one pro or one con that the pandemic and remote work revolution has had on people's work lives. And, I'll toss it to Arthur, actually, because you just went. We'll go back.
Yeah, I think one of the downfalls is the ability to quickly collaborate. I think in person is easier than it is over Zoom or whatever virtual meeting device you're using. So that's kind of a downfall of where we're at today. But I think one of the pros is that bringing back in kind of the work-life balance that we have now is a good thing. People seem to have their well-being is a little bit better. There was a huge adjustment, though. We all not forget this, that we all had Zoom fatigue. We didn't want to be on those meetings. I don't really hear that anymore. I hear more I don't want to go back to the office, and I just want to be on Zoom all day now. So I think we got used to it. But that's a pro. We have the ability now to complete our work wherever we are. And I asked the question to the group in the green room, which was, have we seen a decrease in productivity? The answer is no. So we're actually producing the same amount of output with less people in a distributed environment. So I think that's a really good sign.
Thank you. And keep going down the line, guys.
I talk about this all the time. For me, one of the silver linings of the pandemic was it really brought the conversation around mental health into the corporate environment and made it not only acceptable, but imperative to talk about. And so I think the expansion of benefits in this space, the expansion of acknowledgement, I think what we see leaning into the need and to equip leaders to be able to lead with empathy, I think is really critically important in creating a great person-first employee experience. So that's a pro. I don't know. We could debate. I think we could debate some of the pros and cons all day long. I would say for a con, I do think, particularly in a fully remote environment like the one I'm in, you have to be really intentional about your in-person connection time. So, I mean, you don't just go to an office, bump into someone at the water cooler anymore, or you don't meet friends, right, in the office. And so this has been talked about a lot, particularly for some of the younger generations. So it's a different way of really being intentional and deliberate about creating your social interactions and networks, because as we know from all the research, that's actually really a critical ingredient to overall happiness and well-being.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us on our discussion today. Appreciated having all of you and your insight.
Thank you.